Hello. Okay. Uh, in this short video, I'm going to explain to you externality in a form of summary. So after you go through this video, basically you have an idea like how many types of externality diagrams we have and how to recognize from every single diagram, how to recognize the area of dead weight loss, how to recognize the output level which is socially optimum, how to recognize the private sector output and all those things. So externality is one of the market failure. We call it the failure of market economy or the failure of price mechanism or the failure of private sector without taking into account like the impact of certain actions on the third party. Therefore, the definition for externality is, first of all, externality refers to spill over effect. So it's spilled over to someone else. You are drinking, spilled over to someone beside you. So I don't know how you drink, okay? Secondly, we also can define it as externality refers to the effect on the third party. So the third party are those who are not involved in the production or in the consumption of that particular product. In our previous lesson, we did learn what is meant by social cost, what is meant by social benefit. So we did learn social cost equals to private cost plus external cost, and social benefit equals to private benefit plus external benefit. If you are still not very sure about that thing, so you are advised to go through that particular notes or that particular chapter first before you continue with this video. So, or else you will find it a bit like lost, yeah? Now, before I start doing the summary review, I would like to just re-emphasize two important points about the externality basis, okay? Externality, like some basic informations about the diagram, okay? Now, the first thing is, as you can see, when the economy is currently producing at a level where marginal social benefit equals marginal social cost, that is the output level where we call it the socially optimum level of output. So we call it the socially optimum level of output. So my short form is QSO. And when we produce at MSC equals MSB, the marginal social welfare from that particular output is zero, and therefore the total social welfare is now maximized. So we learned that where when marginal is zero, total will be the highest, will be maximized. And when you have maximized your social welfare, you are said to have achieved allocative efficiency. When allocative efficiency is achieved, you are now producing at the right quantity and there will be no welfare loss, there will be no dead weight loss. Likewise, if you are now producing at a level where MSC doesn't equals MSB, which means marginal cost is either higher or lower than marginal benefit, allocative efficiency is not achieved. Okay, you didn't achieve allocative efficiency. When you are not producing at the right quantity, when you're not producing at the right level of output, you will see like welfare loss, there will be dead weight loss. This is the first point. And the second point that I need you to pay attention is when we talk about benefit curve, being either marginal private benefit or marginal social benefit, okay? Benefit curve is represented by the demand curve, the downward sloping demand curve due to the law of diminishing marginal benefit as consumption rises. Next, since it is the demand curve, whatever movement and changes in the demand curve will represent the consumer's action. So now guys, if I tell you a statement where, okay, if I tell you a statement whereby a particular action brings no external benefit, then you will need to know where your MSP is equals to your marginal private benefit, because there's no externality incurred from this action. So the diagram will be down sloping demand curve, right? In this case, we have only one demand curve where we label as MSB equals MPB, no externality. However, if I mention where, okay, a particular action, consumer's action, yeah, bring positive externality. When we say positive externality, meaning that other than the consumer itself enjoying private benefit, they also bring something positive to the society. So in this case, from here, we can tell where the MSP is greater than MPB. The social benefit is greater than private benefit, which means this action consists of external benefit. So how to identify the level of external benefit from the diagram? Okay, this time around, we can no longer show only one demand curve, because since MPB and MSP, they are not equal, you will have two demand curve. Okay. You can draw the demand curve either parallelly or diverge, because we are not very particular on that. But personally, I think diverge making more sense, because the benefit will spread. Okay, so therefore, but then it is depending, like sometimes the multiple choice question can be parallel, can be showing you two parallel curve as well. So now, let's see, yeah. When this particular output is produced, okay, when it touches the first curve, this is the monetary value of that particular action. Okay, maybe the monetary value is $10 worth of benefit, yeah? Okay. Let me label this part. You can put P or Q as usual. You can put a benefit or cost as well. Okay, and then based on this particular action, the benefit to the second line is higher. Let's say 14. So from here, we will start to think, since MSP is greater than MPB, which means when this particular Q is consumed, the value to the society, the positive value to the society is higher than the positive value to the individual. So we can label the curve now. The lower one is MPB, the higher one is MSB. Okay, and the middle part, the gap between two curves, okay, here refers to your marginal external benefit, because private benefit plus external benefit equals social benefit. So this is some basic that you need to know. And moving on, the third point, if we talk about the cost, if we are now talking about cost, okay, be it MPC or MSC, it is shown by the supply curve. As output rises, cost rises, okay? And at the same time, the supply curve also represents the producer's action. So when you see the question saying, the producer's action bring positive externality or negative externality, regardless positive or negative, you will be moving your supply curve instead of the demand curve, since they mentioned that this action is done by the producer. Okay, now, next, based on the diagram aspect, just want you to know how to recognize. Okay, if I put MPC here, if I put MSC here, you can tell where this action generate external cost, okay? Price, quantity. Now, at this particular output, the cost to the producer is only, let's say, 10 bucks, which include the labor cost, raw material cost, and their desired profit margin or whatsoever. However, the actual cost to the society is 15. Therefore, although the cost to firms is only 10, but then this action or this particular output bring marginal external cost worth $5 to the third party. Now, this is some basic understanding that we need to know. Generally, externality is one of the market failure. Market failure meaning that it is a failure of price mechanism, it is a failure of market economy, it is a failure of private sector decision. Because in free market economy, without government's intervention, in private sector decision making using price mechanism, it is all personal interest orientated. No one will actually concern about the externality. Who cares about the party? Who cares about the people surrounding me? My concern is only myself, okay, my satisfaction, okay? My concern is only my profit. Therefore, we call it a market failure because when the price mechanism or when the private sector, they fail to take into account the negative impact or positive impact to the environment or to the third party, then their decision wouldn't be the best decision for the society, might not be the socially optimum decision. Okay, that's how it. That's what it means. Okay, let's move on. Let's look at the diagrams. Okay, so now I'll show you in a summary form. Okay, let me change my color. I would like to use blue. Okay, now come back to that. Externality. We all know that just now they are positive externality, they are negative externality. Positive externality, which means positive effect to the third party. Negative externality means negative effect to the third party. So we can have positive externality, we can have negative externality. And just now I mentioned where both producers and consumers action can contribute to either positive or negative externality, right? So now we break it down further, okay? Under positive externality, if it is due to consumers action, we can call it positive consumption externality. If that positive externality is contributed by the producer, we call it positive production externality. Likewise, for negative externality, it can be caused by the producer, it can be caused by the producer and consumers as well. So if it is caused by the consumer, we call it the negative consumption externality. If it is caused by the producer, we call it the positive, oops, sorry, it should be negative, yeah, because it is a negative externality. It's just that now this time around is producer, we call it negative production externality. Okay, and now we will pick two most common example to try first, and then I'll leave it to you to try another one, yeah? Now, one of the very common examples in the reality is positive consumption externality. Another one is negative production externality, because we learned it back in AS as well, just that in AS we didn't really use diagram to illustrate the situation. In A2, now we need to enhance our explanation with diagrams. Okay, now, positive externality happen when the consumer's action actually generate positive effect to the third party. So in this case, the first thing you will need to work out a simple so-called formula, okay? If consumers' action generate positive effect to the society, then the marginal social benefit is greater, or the negative social benefit is the marginal social benefit is greater than marginal private benefit, or marginal social benefit is smaller. So think about it. If my action bring positive effect to the third party, so in overall, the positive effect to the society is greater or smaller than my own benefit? Supposed to be greater. So MPB smaller than MSB. And when we are trying to show diagram, there are steps to follow, and to make illustration easy, we will always assume ceteris paribus. So if you are trying to show positive consumption externality, therefore we are assuming something called ceteris paribus. So we assume no externality from the production side. When you assume no externality from the production side, meaning to say your MSC will be equals to MPC, then we can focus on showing the diagram for MPB greater or smaller than MSB. Okay, then let's move on to diagram, yeah? Now, let's show the basic diagram first. Just now we have try some simple one, and then I do the ceteris paribus label first, MSC equals MPC. Okay, now we have two demand curve because MPB doesn't equal MSB. And based on what we learned just now, okay, if you go back to this part, if MSB is greater than MPB, so MSB will be on top, MPB will be at the bottom. Okay, so now I label MSB and MPB. Now, guys, there are always steps to follow, yeah? There are always steps to follow. Even in multiple choice, if they label Q1, Q2, P1, P2 for you, I still want you to label as how I teach you. Okay, the first thing, you need to find out the socially optimum level of output. To find out socially optimum level of output, you look for the output where MSC equals MSB, okay, which is MSB equals MSC, which is here, and label at QSO, socially optimum level of output. Secondly, you need to identify private sector output. As mentioned just now, private sector cares only about their own benefit and their own cost. So they will produce at a point where MPB equals MPC. Okay, so from here, MPB equals MPC, the intersection point is here. Q private sector output. Now, previously we already said, when you are producing a socially optimum level of output, there won't be dead weight loss. However, if you are producing at private sector output, okay, and you will need to check, yeah, the third step, at private sector output, you compare MSC and MSB. You compare MSC and MSB. If you realize that MSC doesn't equal MSB, meaning that there will be that weight loss incurred, which means welfare loss. So let's try. At private sector output, okay, okay, this is MSC. And then when you go further up, this is your MSB. And then at this part, when you drive towards your socially optimum level of output, this shows your dead weight loss. That is how it works to look for your dead weight loss. Because when you are producing at socially optimum level of output, so if you want to check on this thing, yeah. So if you produce a socially optimum level of output, supposedly your basically all your welfare is maximized already. The top part you gain until this, the bottom part you gain until this peak, okay? But then if you are producing only at private sector output, you are actually gaining this much only. You are actually just gaining this much until this part. Therefore, the shaded area in red lines are not included if you produce up to QP only. So in this case, this diagram is showing us a situation, we call it underproduction. When you're explaining merit goods, actually you can use this diagram. When people are having information failure, they don't know how beneficial it is. Therefore, for any consumption, the social benefit is actually greater than private benefit. Okay, this is how it works. Now, we look at another diagram. Okay, let's try. This time round, we talk about negative production externality, which means producer action generate negative impact to the society. Then you will need to, again, look at this formula. If producer action generate negative externality to the society, to the third party, meaning that the negative impact to the society is greater or smaller than the negativity to the producer itself. The cost to the society is greater or smaller than firms itself. So just imagine, or those firms is paying $10 for that, but then actually they are negative externalities spread to the third party. So in total, the actual cost to the society is greater than $10. So now MPC is smaller than MSC. And again, we assume ceteris paribus, so I'm not writing that again. And let's look at the diagram. Since we are assuming ceteris paribus, we only have one demand curve. MSP equals MPB. And we will have two supply curve now. Cost to the private sector is lower. Cost to the entire society is higher. Okay, now follow the step. Let's identify where is QSO, where is QP. Okay, QSO can be obtained by MSC equals MPB. So this is MSC equals MSB, sorry. QSO, socially optimum level of output. And then private sector level of output is MPC equals MPB. Private sector output. Apparently, where you can see the actual output in the economy is more than the socially optimum level of output. This is a case of overproduction. You produce too much already. So we can use this diagram for demerit goods if you want. Okay, now, lastly, we need to identify dead weight loss. As mentioned, dead weight loss only happened at QP. So we need to base on QP compare. Okay, when QP touches the MSB curve, this is your MSB. And then when QP touches your MSC curve, this is your MSC. Okay, and drive it to socially optimum level of output, that is your dead weight loss. This area shows your dead weight loss. Okay. Now, that's the way that we can draw diagram and we can identify the level of output, socially optimum private sector, and also we can identify dead weight loss. If you want an example for negative production externality, it is very common because most of the time in the reality, when firms are producing goods and services, they will only take into account those direct costs that they have to pay, and they will ignore the externality like pollution. They will ignore the water pollutions that they have created or they have bring to the local community. Therefore, if they really take into account those costs to the environment, okay, the actual cost of producing that product is way higher than the costs that they are facing. So the marginal social cost is higher than the marginal private cost. And moving forward, let's look at another two examples, which is the positive production externality and negative consumption externality. Let's follow the same steps. And then we will start with positive production externality first. Okay. Now, based on the same method, if it is positive production externality, meaning to say producers' action bring positive effect to the third party. And if producers' action bring positive effect to the third party, in other words, although producers might suffer from higher costs, but even though the cost faced by producers is high, but after producers bear the cost, the actual cost to the society is lower. So in that case, for positive production externality, it is a situation where your MSC is smaller than your MPC. The cost to the firms is greater than the cost to the society. This condition is quite rare, but there are a few examples that we can quote. Like one of the example can be, maybe the particular firm is fulfilling their social responsibility, and they are they are upholding a highly ethical practice. So they filter all their waste before releasing it to the environment. Because they filter it, they save the money of the government, or they save the hassle to the third party or to the environment, but they are the one who bear the high cost. Another situation can happen where, let's say, one particular firm, they spend a lot of money to train their worker, so they don't mind spending money to build their human capital, so giving a lot of professional training and so on. Because this particular firm spend a lot of money to train their workers, right? So if their workers resign and leave the company and go to other company, they are indirectly helping the other company to cut down their training costs, because the other company, they no longer need to spend that much in order to train this bunch of people. So it can happen where the private cost is greater than the social cost in that case. So again, we draw the diagram, and we are having the ceteris paribus assumption as well. Ceteris paribus as in we assume that there is no externality from the consumer side. MSP equals to MPB. And then now we draw two diagrams. We just need to swap the position. This time around, MSC is lower, MPC is higher. But then the steps in identifying socially optimum level or whatever will be the same, okay? Let's identify the socially optimum level of output first. MSC equals MSB. QSO. Okay. Private sector. QP. Lastly, dead weight loss. Dead weight loss always based on private sector output. At private sector output, this is the MSC, because at this level of output, you go up, it shoot that MSC, and it touch on MSB here. So this, when you drive to the socially optimum level of output, this whole triangle is your dead weight loss. Okay, and next, if we are doing another one, negative consumption externality. Consumers' action is bringing negative effect to the third party. Okay, then our private benefit appeared to be greater than social benefit. There are a lot of examples like this. For example, when I smoke, I am bringing negative effect to the people surrounding me. So my personal satisfaction might be greater than the social satisfaction. For example, in class, when I'm making noise, I'm talking to my friends while the lecturer is teaching. You and your friends might be enjoying your conversation, but then you are making noise, you are disrupting the whole class. So you are affecting the other students, the third party who are not involved in your conversation, but then they got distracted and then they cannot like listen clearly to the lecturer's instructions and so on. And lastly, maybe, for example, you're celebrating your 21 years old birthday, and then you're playing your music locally, okay, inviting all your friends and so on. So you are enjoying all the music and so on, but then you are bringing sound pollution to your neighborhood, to your community, okay? That could be MPV greater than MSP, okay? Now, let's look at the diagram. Assuming the cos side constant, MSC equals MPC. Change the position. This is marginal private benefit, which is greater than marginal social benefit. Okay, Q, P. Again, identify socially optimum level of output first. And then private sector output. And then based on private sector output, the difference between MSB and MSC, the triangle. So drive towards your socially optimum level of output. That is your dead weight loss. Now, this is how it works. And this is just the basic explanation of externality, where you need to know. In our next session, we are going to discuss how to tackle this kind of externality. So when you are facing positive production externality, what the government should do. If you are facing negative production externality, what the government should do. Okay, that will be our next session. But for now, you will need to understand what I share with you in this particular video. Before we end today's session, before I end the video, I would like you to try a few multiple choice questions, yeah? Okay. Now, look at the multiple choice question in your notes under chapter 1. Okay, this is page 17. Okay, let's look at question 23. If you need more time, you just pause the video and then you can try. After that, you can listen to my explanation. For question 23, you are given action 1 and action 2. You are asked to identify what kind of externality is that. Now, point 1, a firm creating an extra supply of trained labor. So the first thing you need to identify is this action is from the producer or from the consumer. So since they mentioned a firm, right? Meaning that it is a production externality. Firm's action, production. So all production you can see here. Okay. And secondly, noise made by house owner cutting his lawn, then definitely it is consumption externality. Okay. Now, secondly, you need to find out whether it is a positive or it is a negative externality. A firm creating extra supply of trained labor, meaning that, like my example just now, the firm is supplying high amount of trained labor. So you are doing good for other people. And this is a positive production externality then. And next, they already mentioned it's a noise. It's not like a nice music to be enjoyed with, okay? When it is a noise, you can tell it is negative already. So the answer is C in this case. And moving on, guys, I'll need you to look at another question, which is 26. Okay. Let's say the diagram is showing you the private cost and social cost and whatever from the consumption or production of goods. And guys, if you look at the diagram is showing you two demand curve. Obviously, this is a consumption externality, okay? Just to test us out, yeah? And they say if there's no government's intervention, so circle this kind of keyword. If there is no government intervention, meaning that the current level of output is a level of output where MPC equals to MPB, because without government's intervention, private sector will act according to their own interests. So we find out which one is MPB equals MPC. MPC, MPB, intersection point here. Okay, and they want the value of marginal external benefit. So at this level, the marginal private benefit to the consumer is 10. But if you want to find out marginal external benefit, MEB equals to MSB minus MPB. So you just compare at this level, okay, Q private sector, this is your MPB, and when it touch your MSB, this is your MSB. So what's the difference? The difference between MPB and MEB is $4. So that is your external benefit. Lastly, look at this example. Okay. Now, the question wants you to base on these 4 diagrams to find out positive consumption externality and negative production externality. Before we look into detail first, we should know that positive consumption, when they say consumption, you have 2 demand curves. So it is definitely not 3 and not 4. Okay, not 3, not 4. Because both 3 and 4, you have 2 supply curves. Do you see that? Okay, and likewise, when they want production externality, definitely not the one with 2 demand curve. So this is either, for this negative production is externality is either 3 or either 4. In that case, the answer is out actually, because only this one with 3. Then let's confirm whether the answer is correct, yeah? Now, they want positive consumption externality, so we look at either 1 or 2. If I want positive consumption externality, my MPB must be smaller than my MSB, because my consumption bring positive effect to the third party. So in this case, we look at A, yeah? Okay, number 1, MPB is higher than MSB, which is wrong. Therefore, number 2 is correct. MSB is greater than MPB at any level of consumption. Let's say when I consume at Q, this is my MPB, this is my MSB. Okay, and moving on to confirm question for 4, negative production externality, definitely the one with 2 supply curve. And then after that, you see, when it is negative production externality, meaning that the cost to the society is greater than the cost to the private firms. The private firms is generating negative externality to the society. So if you look at the diagram number 4, yeah, apparently MPC is higher than MSC at any level of output. Do you see that? This is MPC, this is MSC, which it goes against this context. So this is why the answer is B. Okay. All right, that's all for this particular chapter, this particular small unit, externality. Externality is considered very important, especially if you aim to do efficiency assay. So I hope you will take like some time to go through the video again and then to fully understand how this externality works. Then we will, if you have any other questions, we can discuss further in class. So I'll see you. Bye-bye. Thank you.